Of course, personalization is a broad term and it involves students' interests and how they react to certain kinds of activities. But my idea was to talk about something simple and how we can make small changes and adapting the course book, as Domenico mentioned, in order to make content more relevant to students. Just a quick information about the context in which I teach. I've been teaching online since the beginning of the pandemic, and I teach one-to-one and group lessons all on Zoom. And my student ages range from 11 to 45 years old, and they also have different levels. This is the context in which I've used these activities. The reason I decided to talk about personalization is because it's such an important topic, and we needed to engage students in the lesson and build rapport with them. I really like this quote that you cannot be given motivation to learn something you have no interest in, by James Scrivener. And we've always been told that we need to make content relevant to students, but sometimes this can be a bit difficult, especially when we need to follow a course book or a syllabus. And talking to some colleagues, I've been told that they often find it time consuming and have a hard time relating what they need to teach to their students' lives. But there are a few simple things that we can do to make our lessons a bit more personalized, and that's what I want to talk about. The first idea is a vocabulary activity, and we can use their interests to present a new vocabulary topic that we have to teach. So here, the book suggested an activity about parts of the body that seemed a bit boring, because you just have a boy and the parts of the body and no context. The boy doesn't even have a name. And to make it a bit more interesting, I used Wordwall to create this other activity using my students' favorite singer, and they just had to drag the parts of the body and put them onto the singer's photo. So this is something that took me less than 5 minutes to create on Wordwall, and it was a lot more relevant to them and more engaging than just the boy. Another one is adapting speaking activities from the course books using the students' interests. The first one is a Guess Who game, because course books usually bring photos of famous people for students to describe and talk about when the vocabulary topic is appearance. But sometimes these famous people are not known by the students. For example, I often see George Clooney on the course books, and of course, I really like him. But my 11, 12 years old students, they have never seen Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 13. So they just don't care, or they have no idea who he is. So I created a Guess Who on Canva using photos of actors from their favorite TV shows, which are Riverdale, The Flash, and so on. This obviously takes a bit more time, but once you have the template, it's easier. You can just adapt it to any class and just change the photos, and it becomes faster. The second one, oh, no, sorry. About this activity, I had a very positive feedback, and the students really engaged because we played it for like 2 rounds, I think. And after that, they wanted to keep playing, and they asked me if we had more time in the class, if we could play it again, and if they could use different people. So they started like not just using the pictures, but thinking of characters and famous people they like, and taking turns asking and answering questions to guess who the person was. So I think this was very successful because they were talking about things that they liked, and they felt motivated to keep speaking. The second one is a card containing information about LeBron James. I have an A1 student who is a huge fan of basketball, and what the book suggested was not very challenging. It was just asking and answering about famous people's real names. And that was just too easy, although he's an A1 student. So I created this card with information that we could use to ask and answer questions using the target language, which was verb to be. And not only did he manage to do that, but he also tried to speak more than I expected because he got really excited about talking about his idol. And so obviously he made mistakes and he lacked language to express more complex ideas because of his level. But he was motivated enough to try to speak and he was not afraid of making mistakes. So this was also something really successful and very simple to create. This one I created on PowerPoint and just took a screenshot. So also very simple. Then using these students' lives and even just their names as examples for grammar topics. So here I had some students preparing for the B2 first, and they were already friends, and they always used to joke about arguing. So whenever I put them in the breakout room, they would come back after they had finished and say, oh, we got into an argument, we're not talking to each other. And I would pretend I was sad and so on. So this became quite a habit. And one day we had to revise the structures for describing pictures for the part 2 of the speaking exam. And instead of just going with what the course book suggested, I created a little story about them. And so I was telling the story and writing on the whiteboard. And as I was telling the story and writing, they wanted to contribute. So they asked if they could use a different structure here. Like, can I say they seem to be fighting instead of what I had said? And they kind of helped me build the board. And they got really engaged because they wanted to know how I ended the story because it was about them. So I felt like this generated a lot more contribution and participation than it would have if I had just used the course book examples. And the second one, also just the whiteboard. It was an A2 level class, and we had seen modals of obligation in the previous lesson, but some students were still a bit confused. So the original idea was to use classroom rules to illustrate the modals. But at the beginning of the lesson, they told me they were going on a camping trip on the weekend. So I thought, okay, let's talk about your camping trip. And I asked them to tell me what they must do, must not do, have to do, and so on. And they ended up coming up with more sentences than I had expected, as you can see with these lashes, because they just kept going back and saying a different sentence. And I thought this was very nice because they got engaged and they also learned some new vocabulary like mattress and thermal box, hair dryer, some things that they didn't know. So they asked me and I could help them with that. And I saw that they were writing down, and one of them asked if they could take a screenshot. So for me, it meant that they had enjoyed the activity and understood the concept of the model of obligation. And so this is something very easy that you just need the whiteboard and you don't need any preparation in advance. And the last activity, last but not least, is a controlled practice activity. For a while here in Brazil, all the students talked about was Big Brother. So every class, when I asked them what they had been watching or doing, it was just like watching Big Brother, reading news about Big Brother. So I said, okay, I have to bring Big Brother to the class. And this is a simple exercise. I made it on Bamboozle, so it's also a game. And they had to choose between simple present and present continuous using these photos and situations from Big Brother. And they got really engaged because they were like, oh, are you watching Big Brother too? And I wasn't, but I had done some research on the internet to find the participants and whatever had happened on the weekend. And they were really excited. And one of the students asked me if they could take a photo of the activity to send to a friend to show his friend how nice the classes were, because we talked about Big Brother. So I was very happy that they enjoyed the activity. So these were just some simple examples of what can be done and activities that are not time consuming. And why should we try to do this whenever we can? Because it's simple. We don't need to spend hours preparing something. We can use the websites like Wordwall, Bamboozle. We can use templates that are ready and we can find them online, or even just the whiteboard. So it's a small change or a small activity that makes a big difference. It helps us increase rapport as students feel that you're listening to them and you care about what they like. So this in turn increases their motivation and their participation in class, because they feel more motivated to show up next class and to study English once they know that they can use it to talk about things that they like. And also, I believe that if the topic is somehow connected to their lives, chances are that they will have something to say. They will want to make a contribution. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for having me. And if you have anything or you want to keep talking to me, you can find me on Instagram and also on my email. And now I have to stop sharing this screen.
Thank you very much, Ana Carolina. We do have some questions. And the first one is related to the digital tools that you used and you mentioned, yeah? So I see that you have mentioned Bamboozle, Wordwall, and Canva, right? So what others would you recommend, or which ones do you think are worth using?
Yeah, I also like quizzes a lot for usually at the end of the units or something, or even when introducing a new grammar topic or vocabulary, to find out how much they already know, so I don't get very repetitive. Nowadays, I'm enjoying a lot Bluekit. It has different games in it, and it's also like a quiz, but you have like different game modes. So there's like a hacker or a cafe, so you can choose whatever your students prefer. And I saw that Michael mentioned Kahoot, and the students always want to play them. Yeah. So
do they? Mine got tired.
One that people really like, but I try to offer them options and say, okay, maybe next class we'll play this one, but today let's try a different game. But usually I spend like 10 minutes tops in a game like that. So not the whole class, and sometimes even 5 minutes, because I just put fewer questions.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. One more question. So in a typical coursebook unit, what proportion of tasks need adaptation in order to engage students more?
I think it really depends on the students. I feel that sometimes with adults, it's easier because the course books bring something. They talk about jobs or about, I don't know, traveling. So this is kind of engaging and they can bring their experience. But sometimes with teenagers, I think especially because course books are not made with a specific culture in mind, you have to adapt because they might not know the people or they might not watch the movies that are in the course book. So I think it needs more, but perhaps like 50%, I don't know, of the tests, maybe.
Very good. So 50%. Wow. How long does it take you to plan your personalized lessons that way?
I think not long. Of course, it's not something that I can do every class. That's something I forgot to mention, because sometimes it just it's impossible. Like, but whenever I can, I try to bring something that they like, even if it's just on the whiteboard as the example of the grammar topic, or letting them do a presentation. So like using the target language, you're going to talk about your favorite actor or something. So this is less time consuming. But I say like maybe depending on the lesson, 1 hour to prepare a 1 hour and a half lesson. Yeah.